Don't you just light up a room, eh? You're looking well.
What is this?
Hey everyone,
I am the Pumpkin King!
I'm Lumii, and today I'm going to be ranking all 50 Supes that we get to see on the hit show The Boys.
Diabolical!
This show's satire on the superhero genre is amazing in my books, and I personally can't get enough of it.
I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
So this list was a ton of fun to make.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
This ranking won't be just based on how powerful they are, but how much they bring to the show character-wise.
Don't be a pussy, laser my fucking tits.
If you enjoy this, please check out Red's ranking and review of all 3 seasons down below in the description,
Nice work, Bone Daddy.
along with the upcoming ranking of all 40 main characters.
Don't be a cunt.
That way we can spread the love to all us muggles, too. To start off this list, we have A-Train, another member of the Seven and the world's fastest man, depending on the day.
I can't stop.
This character is pretty powerful, but he's not the smartest, and I wouldn't bet on him in a fight. His character, for the most part, is really one note for me, but it's not a bad tune. And he does finally get a little bit of redemption in the end of season 3 with his heartfelt apology to Huey, after his older brother gets hurt at the hands of another Supe. He's not fully redeemed, but he's starting to move in the right direction. He is portrayed super well, and I like the layers of character they give him. He's not amazing, but I can confidently throw him in the good category. Up next is Blue Hawk, the Supe who injured the previously mentioned brother of A-Train. This character was one of the more disappointing Supes on the show for me. He had some good plot impact, but he wasn't that interesting. His powers were just being really strong and durable, so he loses points there. He does have one of the most awesome, gruesome deaths in this show for sure, with his body being dragged by A-Train. And then the irony of A-Train getting his heart is priceless. He's a meh character though, sadly. Coming up next is Popclaw. This character wasn't around long, but she had a cool season 1 plotline. And the scene with her and her landlord role-playing was funny and ended in a bang.
I am gonna sit right here until the cops come.
Her powers were kind of cool, like shitty Wolverine, but it worked well for her character as a B-team hero. She had some decent character layers, along with having a semi-tragic death being killed by her man, so I'll throw her in the good, below her ex, A-Train, for the moment. Next up is Ezekiel. This Supe is super memorable just because of the pass-by sex scene with him being very stretchy, while still keeping it super clean. If you know, you know. I love the social satire on this character being super religious and a role model, but deep down being one of the most corrupt Supes out there. He also gets points for pretty interesting power, but other than that, he's just gotta go in the okay. Up next is Gunpowder. This member of the Pay Brat group was a cool little parody on Deadshot. He wasn't that memorable or interesting to me, and his powers of enhanced marksmanship skills and overall sight aren't the strongest, so I can't put him very high. He does have the cool backstory of being Soulja Boy's sidekick, but other than that, he's kind of meh. Coming up next is Termite.
Wait! You can't leave.
The Ant-Man knockoff with the most screen time. It's a cool little Easter egg how he pops up in season 1 real quick just during an orgy scene. And in season 3, he's got some really crazy fun set pieces, getting stuck in a bag of cocaine and imploding somebody from the inside out. The scene with him and Frenchie fighting is hilarious as well.
He's trying to get in my ass!
This character might be minor, but I think he's great. In good, below Popclaw, he goes for now. Up next is Shockwave. I personally think this character is superior to A-Train, at least power-wise. He can do everything A-Train can do, as well as create a shockwave when he claps his hands together. But we never really learn anything substantial about this character before he loses his head at the Congress meeting, thanks to now Vice President Newman. So below Ezekiel, in okay he goes. Next up on the list, we have Stormfront.
Don't be a pussy, laser my fucking tits.
This is one of the most interesting and fun characters in the show for sure. She bursts in the scene in season 2 and shakes up the show in a really cool way. I liked her early on. She was honest and sarcastic and fun, But she took a wrong turn really fast with some questionable morals, to put it nicely. I found her backstory interesting, though it raised a few too many weird questions about the timeline. But she's definitely a memorable as hell, along with being super crazy powerful. So I think she's gonna have to go in Souptacular up front for now. Coming up next is Teddy Stillwell. We don't see much of him after he disappears in the season 1 finale, but in season 3, we get to see him while at a bot facility. And it makes you wonder what's next for him. He has the ability to teleport like Huey, but he can keep his clothes on, so that's a big bonus. Hopefully we see more of this little Easter egg. For now, he'll go at the top of meh. Next up is Ryan. I find this character and the tension that surrounds him to be fascinating. All the characters fighting over the rights to raise one of the most powerful Supes in the world is insane. Thank goodness he's still too young. But now that Homelander has him, I think dark times are ahead for this little one. On his own, he's not that great, but the dynamic between characters he generates is amazing. So I'll put him in good between Popclaw and Termite. Next up is Eagle the Archer, a Hawkeye knockoff with similar powers to gunpowder, having enhanced marksmanship skills. But this Supe sadly falls a bit flat. He's bland, and I don't think he's ever used that bow he carried. His plotline with the Deep is okay, and he did shine a little light on the church's corruption, but in last place behind Blue Hawk he goes. Up next is the Deep, or Aquaman. This character is really mixed for me. I really want to like him as he has some of the craziest, most ridiculous scenes.
If I just touch it, will you shut up?
But he keeps being a jackass throughout the show, and I can never fully root for him. His powers are pretty awesome, though not the most useful, and this show definitely takes advantage of them, having him and his various relationships with marine life. So horrifically entertaining. I hope the next season he can redeem himself a little bit more and climb this list. For now, I gotta put him in Souptacular, ahead of Stormfront. Next up is Lamplighter. I thought this character lived up to the hype of only seeing his outline in episode 1. He was cast hilariously, getting the ice guy from X-Men to play the fire guy. I think they did a good job at giving his character some good backstory and motivations for his minimal screen time. I'll throw him at the top of okay. Up next is Temp v. Butcher.
Good to see you.
Butcher is too OP when he's all juiced up for me. His powers mirror Homeland with the exception of flying and different colored lasers. I think they made him too powerful and it makes things less interesting, but thankfully it's only temporary. I think this show has so many ridiculous powers, I feel like they could have come up with something way more fun for him. I love Butcher when he's human, but I have to knock his Supe version down just a little peg. In good below A Train, he slides. Coming up next is the Silver Kinkade, one of the contestants to be the new member of the 7 in season 3. We never see a whole lot from this character, but the small amount we do know had me really intrigued. She was said to have the highest rescue stats of any hero, and her powers are really cool, having telekinesis and telepathy. If Homelander wasn't so against diversity, we might have seen more of her, as she was Starlight's first pick. But unfortunately, she came and went too fast. I'll bump her up to okay though, below Shockwave. Next up is Temp v. Huey. His Supe powers are hilarious and awesome. The fact that he can teleport is great, but when you add in the factor that he loses his clothes and casts, cracks me up. I think it works perfectly for the story and character. It's minimal, but very well done. He probably shouldn't be so high, but I have to put him in 7 worthy. Up next is Cindy, or 11, all grown up. I was always waiting for this character to pop up again. I've always thought that she was the person making everyone's heads explode, but so far she's still missing. Her powers are absolutely terrifying, and there's so much mystery here. Hopefully we get to see more of her character in the future. For now, she'll go in Meh, below Teddy Stillwell. Up next is Kimiko. I have really mixed feelings about this character overall. I can never really get fully invested in her plot lines for most of the series, as she's portrayed as too much of a crazy beast. Poor girl. In season 3, they really improve on her character though, in a good way, giving her some real personality. Her powers are really strong, but they're not that interesting, just having super strength and healing powers. But she's basically the muscle for the boys. I gotta put her in good though, above A-Train, as I do find her to be a great sympathetic character. Coming up is Mindstorm. the member of Payback that went into hiding after the Soulja Boy betrayal. His powers were awesome yet terrifying. I don't want to be locked in the worst part of my mind while my body slowly dies. That sounds awful. I like that they added balance to his insane powers as well by making him physically pretty much human. It would have been nice to see him stick around longer, but Soulja Boy and his shield had other plans for him. So for me, he goes in okay, above Shockwave. Coming up next is Starlight. I love this character so much, and I think that they do an excellent job making her relatable and sympathetic, especially early on with her entering this crazy new world along with us by her side. She was super powerful, but I like the natural weakness that they implement with her needing actual power. She's by far one of the biggest standouts on the show, in my opinion. I have to put her in 7 worthy, above her on and off fling, Huey.
You put them together, they're the goddamn fucking Spice Girls.
Next is Tony. Another character we don't really know much about. He just brings up a lot more questions. Like, what is the Red River Institute and what happened there? And who is Nadia? Sadly, he was killed off before we could even learn what his powers could have been, because clearly he had some sort of enhancements. Because of the level of intrigue he brings for me, he goes at the higher end of meh. Up next, we've got Doppelganger. He is introduced in season 1 as he helps Madeline Stillwell blackmail the senator. I feel like Vought could have done more with them. He can literally be anyone. The scenes with Homelander were well done, and the tension leading up to his death was superb. For me, he sits in good, below A-Train. Coming up is Nakeeb. Sadly, another short-lived Supe, but he went out with a bang. Or at least tried. The idea of his character worked great for the show as a Supe terrorist. But other than that, he was pretty weak overall. I gotta put him in meh. Next on the list is Soulja Boy. I'm personally a bit biased on this character as he is played by Supernatural star Jensen Ackles. He has a great backstory and it just keeps getting more interesting the more I watch. The new twists they throw in are great and work well within the story as a whole. For me, he goes at the bottom of 7 worthy. Coming up next is Swado. In my opinion, he's the least interesting or memorable member of Payback. We really only see him in flashbacks. He goes out in a very fitting way, swatted out of the air after giving the camp's position away. Good job, man. His wings left me a little curious as we never learn a whole much about him. So he's in meh for me. Up next, we have the acid vomit patient super. This is another character that we only see briefly and don't learn much about. His death was as funny as it was tragic, as his face dissolved in his own acid. You would think he would have some sort of resistance to it. Poor bastard. In meh, he slides. Moving on, we have Blackmore. Blackmore is the only dual member of Payback and the 7, and didn't really have any interest for me until season 3, right before his untimely death. He was cool but bland up until Soulja Boy came back. I loved how we actually got to learn a little bit about him in the 3rd season, and the way he expressed his thoughts with cartoons was amazing. Because of the way his character finished in the show, I have to bump him up to good, slightly above Supe Butcher. Moving down the list, we've got Punchy Wall Guy. Not much to say about him except he seems to have mild super strength and the ability to heal, hopefully, but that seems to be it. I kind of wonder if this was his first cell or if he was just, I don't know, punching his way through the building, room by room. For me, though, he's just meh. Up next is Love Sausage.
God damn. Brother's got a love sausage.
And his, unique skills. His ability to grow his love sausage is hilarious and surprisingly useful. We see it break through glass, uncut. He's able to take a punch from Kimiko and still escape to be seen at Herogasm in season 3. So based on how crazy, unique, and memorable he is, I gotta put him in good, just below Termite. Next on the list is Blindspot, the Daredevil knockoff character that was gone as quick as he showed up. Yet another victim of Homelander's hatred for diversity. I was always curious if he had healing powers as well, or if they just killed him. If anyone has any idea, let me know below, because as far as I know, we never see him again, or hear from him. But for now, he's meh. Up next is the EMP patient, another character we don't see a whole lot of, and he shows up too conveniently, in my opinion. He escapes just to go up against the only Supe that he can actually disable, just to get away. There should be a balance in everything, but he doesn't seem to have any other purpose in the show. For me, he's got to go in meh. Next up is Gecko. I personally loved Gecko's character and wish we saw a little bit more of him. Him and Starlight had an interesting relationship, being previous friends from camp, and his powers are some of the most memorable on the show, especially the way they presented him with the amputation in the hotel room. I can confidently throw him in good, above the knockoff Ant-Man. Next up, we got the phasing patient. We never really find out a whole lot about this Supe. We get a glimpse while inside the Sage Grove Center, but that's about it. He appears to have teleportation powers, but unfortunately is not cool enough to teleport out of the building for some reason. I honestly would be doing anything I could to escape from that hellhole. And meh, he goes, at the bottom. Coming up next, we've got the laser baby. This baby is simply diabolical. How would you even teach a kid like that to not accidentally kill you? Poor baby probably has to live in a laser-proof box until he's old enough to figure out how not to kill anyone. As cool as this kid is, he's got to go in meh for me. Next up, we've got Crimson Countess. Even though this Payback member gets the most screen time and proves to be pretty important plot-wise, I never really get hooked on her character. She has decent powers, being able to produce fireballs from her hand, but it doesn't really make up for her bland character. She was just kind of okay overall for me. I'll put her behind Lamplighter. Up next on the list is the 2-in-1 TNT twins, the clumsiest and silliest members of Payback. I personally don't see how these two were even picked to be on a VOT team. It takes both of them to even use the one power. So just keep them separated and all is gravy. Good job. They were funny comedic relief, but the show would be the same without them. So in meh they go. Next up is Tiny Hero. Not much to say about him except he's the second Ant-Man knockoff we see. And this one is trapped in a room at the Sage Grove Center. It's disappointing that he didn't find a way out of this place given his massive advantage. Come on, Ant-Man. For me, he goes in meh. Coming up, we got Homelander. So much could be said about this character. He's insanely on edge and yet still has a sweet side when it comes to family. Understandably so. His backstory is so tragic, and as much as I tried to fully hate him, I found myself on more than one occasion sympathizing with him as we see things from his perspective. From his mommy issues to his homicidal tendencies, the depth he brings to this show is great. For me, the way he emotes in every scene has me fascinated. He definitely goes to 7-worthy. At the top. Up next, we've got Livewire, another contestant on American Hero TV show applying for the 7. He's got some awesome powers, kind of being an OP version of Starlight, being able to actually produce the electricity that he shoots. But we never actually get to see him really execute anything there or don't know anything about him story-wise. So in meh he goes. Up next is Kimiko's brother. I never really got super hooked by anything this character brought to the show except his connection to his sister. His powers are great, but we see the limitations he has when Stormfront cripples him and when he's duct taped. He's nothing without his hands, so he has to lose a few points, but he's definitely memorable. I just wasn't in love with his plotline. So for me, he goes in okay, above the Crimson Countess. Moving on is the Nubian Prince. This character appears to be the satirical take on Black Panther. We never see him in person, but we know he's pretty badass, being designated to a huge city like Detroit or Baltimore. He has super strength and speed, as well as the ability to levitate in the air. So cool. So major points for being badass. If we got more of him as a person, he'd probably be way higher. But for me, he goes in meh. Moving on is Victoria Newman. The twist with this character being not just a Supe, but maybe the most badass Supe, was crazy cool. And it has some serious ramifications for the show. It caught me completely by surprise and brings her character way up for me, especially the way season 3 ended with her being the vice president nominee. For me, she places in Supetacular below Stormfront. Next up, we've got her daughter, Zoe Newman. We never see this little girl's powers, so it might be cheating throwing her on this list, but I think it's a pretty safe bet that we will see her with some enhanced abilities, considering they've set it up and teased too much for it to not follow through. I hope she doesn't have the same powers of her mom, though. That would be too awful for the world. I can't put her very high for obvious reasons, but we'll go right above Nakeeb. Next up, we have Moonshadow, another contestant in season 3, trying to join the 7. There's very little known about her overall. She has neurosensory hacking powers, so that's kind of cool, but we never get to really see anything else from her. Maybe if the deep didn't take the final spot, we might know more. In meh she goes. Next on the list is Translucent. We don't see much of this character as he can be invisible, but he still plays a large role in the show. I like that they made him a creeper because I feel like that would totally happen if someone had powers now. I also love his speech about his real superpower being reading people rather than the invisibility. It really struck a chord. Unfortunately, this character died before we could see much more, but he did go out with a bang, thanks to the boys. For me, he goes in Souptacular, at the bottom. Coming up next is Glowy-Eyed Girl, another character from Sage Grove Center. Almost nothing is known about this young girl except her eyes glow, but I kind of wonder if she has similar powers to Starlight. I really wonder how all these patients haven't broken out or aren't constantly trying to escape, at the very least. Another meh for the group. Next on the list is the Zappy Lights patient. Not much to say about this one either. We see him briefly at the Sage Grove Center as well, zapping out the lights. And since we don't know anything else, in meh he goes. I wonder if maybe he has Starlight powers as well, or a variation of them. Up next is Supersonic. Supersonic comes in season 3 and is another childhood friend of Starlight. She must have spent a lot of time at soup camps or something. I thought this character would be really annoying as a new love interest for Starlight, but they did a good job at making him a lot more interesting than that. He kept trying to help Starlight, working really well, but it bit him in the butt when Homelander found out from A-Train, thanks a lot, and murdered him for it. His powers were kind of boring and brought nothing new to the series, but they weren't bad by any means. In okay he goes, towards the top, below Kimiko's brother. Last, but definitely not least, is Maeve. I personally loved Maeve in the first season, but as the show went on, she kind of dropped lower and lower. I feel like the show kind of forgot about her and she became a real background character. I was really bummed that she didn't have a bigger role. It feels like she was just another money-making action figure for Vought, especially after her girlfriend was discovered. Oh no. For me, she places in Souptacular. At the top though. All in all, this is a great show and I love what they've done so far. Hopefully they will continue to surprise us all with new twists and superpowers. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, check out our ranking of all the seasons of The Boys. Thanks for listening, guys, and don't be afraid to let me know your opinions below. Bye, guys.